pretty exciting program today. We're going to talk a little bit about low code, what it matters for your organization, and the impact that it's having on software development, applications, and innovation. Really excited. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. Appreciate it. Why don't we start for some introductions?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Gaurav, Shekhar. I'm the program director of the Graduate Business Analytics program at UT Dallas. I'm also an assistant professor of instruction in the Naveen Jindal School of Management. And I'm a low-code fan. And that's what I do in one of my classes that we teach in the School of Management on robotic process automation. We have a long-standing relationship with Appian, and the fact that we certainly feel that this space, and I'm thankful to all of you for being here today, is a very, very exciting space for the next several years. So happy to be a part of it.
Dan?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Fisher. I'm a partner at KPMG, part of our digital Lighthouse, and I am responsible for our low-code integration and data platforms business here in the U.S. We have teams here in the U.S., Mexico, and India, and they're several hundred strong, focused on delivering low-code applications and data platform applications to our business. I'm particularly excited to be here because I actually grew up just down the street here in Richardson, and it's just been amazing to see the growth of the industry, and excited to partner with Gaurav and the UT Dallas program. We sponsor an Appian class that we've got about 40, 50 people in the spring, and we're finding it to be a great source of collaboration and talent that we're able to tap into, and so look forward to growing the partnership.
And Malcom Ross, I'm the Vice President of Product Strategy for Appian, and also Deputy Chief Technology Officer. So Appian, if you didn't know, we're a software company that specializes in a low-code automation platform. We're about 1,700 people worldwide, mainly here in the United States, Europe, and Australia, and publicly traded. Of course, we'll talk a little bit more about low code and how that's different as well.
You're leading the moderator here in my next question, which is you're making it very easy for me. I appreciate which is essentially, what is low code? I think there's a lot of folks in our audience and on the platform that are probably new to the term of what it is. So you want to start with that?
I mean, low code is an adjective, right? It simply describes making humans able to more easily express their desires to computers. Traditionally, we've done this through coding in the past, like 30 years. Before that, we did it with punch cards. Before that, we did it with transistor and circuits. Before that, we did it with mechanical engineering, like the Turing machine, things like that. So all it is about how we talk to computers, how do we tell computers our intent, and how do we get the computer to do what we want. Now, low code is a design methodology that applies that concept to software development. Now, I've heard, over 400 vendors now advertise themselves as low code. And I've seen vendors in the video game space advertise themselves as low code development platforms, ERP systems, and Appian specifically. We focus on a general purpose enterprise low code platform, as well as specifically automation capabilities. How do I do process automation? So low code, as you think about from a design practice, how it's different from coding, is it's using declarative visual modeling techniques. It's trying to say, well, instead of forcing a person to get a computer science degree, I have a computer science degree myself, but it's a hard thing to get a computer science degree, to learn class libraries and Java programming or .NET programming, and try to allow computers to understand languages that humans understand better, which is typically more visual, especially. So if I want to build an interface, we probably all use drag and drop interface design tools where you just kind of build it. But outside of that, you also have logic. How do I define the logic of an application? So let's have a process. There's standards. I'm not sure familiar. There's like a OMG group, Object Management Group, which is a global standards body for defining standards. They have standards like the business process modeling notation, or BPMN. They also have things like decision modeling notation, DMN. These are visual ways for defining workflow logic and visual ways for defining rule logic of how computers would process something. That basically is a way that's easier for non-technical people to express their intent. So they can drag and drop. As we probably all draw on a whiteboard. Well, after Mary gets it, then Jane's going to have it, and then John's going to receive it in a workflow. Well, you can just draw that in a computer, and the computer understand it and then turn that into a executable program language. The same thing with like a decision table. If you're in the insurance industry, if you ever done like actuarial mathematics, you've probably seen like decision logic of an insurance rate table. Well, a lot of business people understand how to design a decision table of what rates go to which person. Well, you can just write a decision table and then have that turn into a programming environment. So there's lots of different manifestations of low code, but that's the whole idea, is breaking down that human computer barrier, trying to make it simpler and simpler for humans to just express their intent, is my definition.
Well, I mean, I think everything you said, I certainly agree with. I think some of the exciting stuff that just takes out is just the simplicity for the business user or the developer. So we're finding that we're able to take process analysts and move them into some of the low code development. And because the platform is so easy to use, we don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about, is this going to run on an iOS system or a PC or a Mac? Because we're able to build these applications using Appian, kind of thinking about the process and how we want it to work. And the software and the tool kind of behind the scenes makes it really easy to do. So if you can kind of draw it on a whiteboard and say, this is what I want it to look like, and this is how I want to play with it. And, the business analysts that are, coming out of school and been in the industry for several years are just the window, the phone iOS systems, and the look and feel is very intuitive. And so our brains are kind of already gotten to the place of, we know what we want, we know how we want to interact with it. And it's you don't have to wait kind of weeks and months to kind of draw it up and send it to a development team and get it back and test it. You can see these things in hours, right? And be able to really play with it. And it's interesting. I spent a lot of time doing data analytics. I was working with a commodities trading company up in New York, and I got on the phone with a controller, and they were looking for some high-end analytics forecasting and so we started talking about what is it you're trying to do? And she was describing that, well, we get this data from third parties, and it comes in, and then we have to kind of allocate and figure out from these work orders that we're getting in over emails and text messages, how much of a commodity was sold to another partner. And then we make a manual entry to the ERP, and we send an invoice out, and we manually create it. And but we're finding we got a lot of kind of adjustments at the end of the month to kind of true it all up. And she's like, we need to get better in our forecasting. So kind of talked about that for a few minutes. I said, if we step back though, what you just described sounds very manual. Like we could put low code around this. And she's like, well, explain to me what this low code is. And so I started describing it to her, and she's like, well, that sounds really expensive in time. We don't have time for all that. But so we're going to continue the dialogue, and we're going to meet with her IT team and talk about, is there an opportunity not just to kind of bring in someone to write the algorithms better, but manage the workflow, check the data quality as it's coming through, and really automate this process. And I think for a lot of our customers, it's this digital transformation opportunities are these gaps that exist between processes and the way we've always done it, and ERPs that they have on the shelf, and third parties, and low code and kind of digital transformation. There's a lot of value creation to be had by imagining and playing in these gaps.
I was just going to add, and then Gaurav, and get your perspective, especially I took a C++ class in college. I did not do well in it. What I learned from that is it's not very intuitive sometimes when you're having to do some of that development programming. So what I like about it's a visual way, and most folks have done stuff in Visio and they understand what a process flow looks like. And if your mind works in how does the process flow look like, and you can start to build an application that way. And Dan, we're going to get to this in the next portion of it, but it really allows bringing business users that absolutely understand the process and the application to get in the room with the technology team to kind of put things together. So first I want to get your perspective on that, and we'll go to Dan on the business
Absolutely.
side.
Well, the master said most of the things, so I don't have much to add here, but one of the things that I feel that low code really helps us with is speed. And this is something that I do with my students all the time. I ask them to write a program, and how they have to write the program: open Notepad and start writing a program. And yes, there are not everybody is very appreciative of that method, and they feel they could have been something simpler to do this. Another thing that we have seen a lot of times is being in the business school, we have a lot of group projects across a lot of different classes, and students come with great ideas, amazing ideas. I mean, if you can put all those ideas together and just say, execute it the next day, the world will be a much better place. But then those ideas, they die in our LMS. Why? Because the execution point of it, how do we make it a reality, is a major, major stumbling block for them. And just the enormity of how, I mean, this is the thing that they feel, it's a lot of coding.
Mhm.
Now, when you talk about business problems, you talk about world problems, they exist. And yes, writing applications, coding is a way to respond to that problem. But yet the skill to develop a solution, the skill to bring that solution to life is the real thing that we need. So a low-code platform really cuts down on that journey and lets you see tangible products in front of you working. Because at the end of it, when somebody sees an idea executed and it's working in front of you, that's where they gain trust. When you trust an application's implementation, that's when you make that change. Else, it is just some talk in the air. So I feel that bringing an idea to a reality is something that low-code platforms really help, and they drive it with a great speed.
We've talked a lot about, I think, the technology of low code, right? I'm curious to get your perspective through engagements with your customers at the business level, right? How is low code impacting the business, and where do you see?
Yeah, so it's an exciting time really from a digital transformation perspective. So if you think back to a lot of the systems that have been implemented over the past 20, 25 years, a lot of the ERPs, the processes that are embedded in those, the level 1 through level 4s and all the kind of the roles and the way that data flows through those systems is all based on kind of going and KPMG, right? So I look at a lot of things through an accounting lens. All kind of goes back to green columnar paper and how did we create processes on green columnar paper where we would write it down, we would pass it, we had checks and balances to make sure that the individuals that were doing it were correct, they weren't committing fraud. And so as we started to move those processes into systems, we created systems that worked the same way as the old paper process worked. And then we kind of hardened that over time and more and more. And a lot of our, kind of the startup clients I work with, they don't have these legacy processes that are put in place. They just say, what is it we're trying to accomplish? And what's the best way to do that? And so you look at their applications and their process flows, and they're really very optimized and harmonized processes. They're able to drive things out very quickly. And you're starting to see larger organizations that are coming back, trying to kind of bring that startup mentality to the way they do things. They're building Scrum teams that are comprised of business people and technology people kind of together, and they're rethinking the processes from scratch and building around the edge. And so when we talk about digital transformation, a lot of places my team is playing is at the edge of trying to put wrappers around these things and harden it up. But as you look at other technologies that are emerging, things around data clouds and moving things to the cloud, you can see low code just disrupting whole sets of kind of legacy package applications and companies that are really just unlocking a completely different way of doing business. Everything from how you make the supply chain simpler to how do we interact with the customer and create a completely different experience for them. And so for me, the low code, it really allows us to move from years to kind of screw in a predefined process that's pretty hardened to rethinking, well, if this is the data and these are the people and these are the products, how do we want it to work going forward and really be creative and have an enterprise level, scale architecture that underpins the whole thing, which is really key.
I think what Gaurav said earlier about having people have such great ideas and then not be able to execute, it's a testament to kind of the current state of software development. If we just take an example, I have the mindset of a product manager for a low-code tool. So thinking about how we look at the problems of software development and try to break it down. One example would be like data architecture. How many people have actually like designed data architectures, either relational databases, vector columners? So if you know, like it's complex because there's multiple ways to store data. You can have a vector column or data store. You could have a key value pair tuple based system. You could have a SQL based system derived from like PyCalculus. You can have a variety of ways, document object store. And in order to know what way to start the foundation of your application by how you store data, you kind of have to have an idea of how that data is going to be used in the future so that you don't have to rip out the foundation. It's very much like laying the foundation of your house. If your data architecture is poorly designed, then you're not going to be able to do certain things. Like if I use a document object store, I'm going to find that doing cross object analytics is not going to be really possible very much. So that's one of these things when you're getting beyond like a C++ class, it's like, it's really hard to think about not only to do it itself, but also to think about the architectural design of the entire thing. So as like a low-code vendor, what we do is we look at all the problems of software development and we try to break it down and then come up with solutions. So like to data architecture, what we approach is basically, it's a patent that we've just recently received, but it's a amorphous changing data architecture based on design time awareness. So the data layer itself is connected to the design time experience so that you define your data model as a kind of an object-oriented data model, very straightforward. And then as you design on the data model, so if I build a report that aggregates on a certain column, or if I build like a sort or a search that's on a specific field, I don't need to go back and hire DBA to apply index and create a view. It simply recognizes the intent of the design and then automatically changes the data architecture behind the scenes to adapt to the intent of the design. So that's just something like an example what a low-code platform tries to focus on is trying to understand what you're doing and then molding and changing the architecture behind the scenes. The system itself is trying to understand the intent of the human and then try to find the best way to deliver the experience that's expected for that application. And that applies on several levels, like data architecture is one. Another one is parallel computing. So for example, if anyone do parallel computing for multi-core CPUs, where you have multiple threads, everyone knows you've done it. So, it's hard. It's like usually it's master doctoral level computer science work where you're trying to say, okay, everyone has a multi-core CPU now, right? So you can't buy a single core anymore. Well, multiple cores means that multiple threads can be processed simultaneously. If I write a program, typically a program is always going to be sequential and it's going to run across a single thread. But if I have a program where, well, I want to run it fast and there's opportunities for parallelism where I can run this logic and this logic of the program at the same time, well, I want to have it multi-core and multiple threaded. Typically in a high code experience, you need to tell the software to do that. So I need to define it prescriptively in Java programming and say, yeah, if I have an opportunity for multi-core processing, then go ahead and use it. In a low code platform in their sense, it simply automatically analyzes the application structure and says, oh, well, I see opportunities for parallelism because you have multiple logic areas that can not dependent on each other. And I will automatically scan the architecture running it, say, oh, I'm running on a 16-core system on an Intel Xeon. I have those cores available to me, automatically parallelize across the system. So it's these are the problems we talk about low code, that the really challenging things of software development, breaking it down, trying to provide a layer that obscures all that from the designer intent. So they have to worry about the architectural designs. They just design their intent and it runs inside the architecture, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I feel like you just had to take us through the really technical,
well,
beyond my C++, just to say, we did this so you don't have to worry
exactly,
about this.
Exactly. It's
so I felt like I went through all that and said, oh, but we don't have
a lot
to
of
worry
people
about
don't
this, and that makes me feel
understand,
better.
the complexities. They wonder why their software project failed. And it's like, oh, because it wasn't parallelized, or, oh, because you chose the object-oriented data store instead of a relational data store. It's like, all they want is they want what they want very quickly. And again, it's why we have computer scientists today that understand these things. But those people are very rare. We're trying to have more people graduate from the courses, but there's not enough of them. So we need to have the software also then adapt to the intent.
But then the ability to get people up to speed and get them working, in development teams, because the software is taking care of those things, have to have as many architects kind of surrounding the project, watching for design and doing, load testing and those things. You still need to do it at the end, but the software catches most of that for you.
I think it actually flows right into the next portion of the conversation, which from your perspective, I know you're very engaged in ensuring that you're bringing students out with skill sets that are meeting market demands.
Yep.
And so I'm curious to get your perspective on kind of the shift in skill set needs and what businesses are looking for.
Absolutely. And this is something that we see on a daily basis. 15, 20 years ago, if you looked at a developer, that person would just be a developer. A tester would just be a tester. A project manager would just be a project manager. And it has changed over a period of time. The number one reason why projects failed is also the number one reason why they succeeded: communication. So what was found out was that these roles cannot really exist in silos. And because they cannot exist in silos, I mean, if you're a developer, I don't want to stop you from being a tester or a business analyst or somebody who can look at a variety of things. Because at the end of the day, what we are achieving here is a business objective. As an organization to solve a business problem, your organization might have products that are used by millions of other users. So it's not about demarcating those roles, but that synergy between them that is required. So we see a lot of these hybrid roles now. You might be a test lead, and then you might be a scrum master at the same time, and maybe doing some coding as well. What we want our students to do is also look at these skills, not just vertically, but also horizontally, how they can acquire more of these skills, which are very different in nature. Now, from an organization standpoint, when we look at things, why should coding only be restricted to a small group of people? I'm not saying that, computer engineers or computer software developers are not, they'll become obsolete with this. I mean, I myself have a computer science degree, but the fact is that it just enlarges the pool of people who have the ability to solve a business problem using technology. And low code helps you deliver that. Now, if you are good with your logic and you know that, okay, this is how I need to stitch in these components to deliver a solution, maybe knowing what the underlying logic around it is not your need. Your need is the utility part of it. And if you know what is the sequential steps in which the solution should be stitched together, you are somebody who's creating a solution. You are somebody who's addressing a business problem. I mean, at the end of the day, when clients come back and they tell companies, I'm sure Dan, Malcom, you hear this all the time, that how good the whole experience was. They will not say, you know what, I just love that Python script that you wrote. Nobody says it that way. They talk about the experience, and the experience is delivered by all these different components working in together, symbiotically. And that's where I feel that the shift that we have seen in the industry is about growing horizontally, having those skill sets that can cut across multiple places. And in fact, one of the things that we recently saw with COVID was, COVID impacted organizations differently. And there was a need to move personnel from one department to another, maybe. That's where those cross skills really help them. Maybe the current team that you were working in may not need those skills for whatever reasons, but there's another opportunity and you can move around. So I think the longevity of somebody's career is also dependent on what kind of skills you keep with yourself and how do you enlarge that pool of skills. I mean, for me, for about 15 years now, it used to be LinkedIn, now it's Teams. The message there that I always have is learn, unlearn, and relearn. We got to learn new things. We got to unlearn the things that were done differently in the past. And maybe there are some things we need to relearn. But till the time we keep our skill sets fluid enough that they can acquire more and more areas, I think we all will see much bigger benefits of the practitioners who are part of our workforce.
I think it's interesting because you just brought this up to mind, is I think everybody's aware there's a shortage of developers, right? I hear that from every organization I talk to, and we've talked about this in the past. It's hard to hire developers right now. And so, Gaurav, to the point you're making, if we can widen that pool of people that can become developers, I think we're helping ourselves in terms of the ability to go take on some of these challenges because now we have a wider pool of folks that can do that. I'm curious to get your thoughts also on just the drive. We talked about the ability to do things fast. And what that means from an innovation perspective. So Gaurav, I'll start with you because I know you've done some capstone projects as well. You're working with some organizations, and I think it's fun to see what students can do in a short period of time in kind of partnership. So just talk a little bit about kind of the innovation that you've seen through the agility, and then Malcom and Dan, I want to get your thoughts as well.
Absolutely. So I teach a course on digital consulting. And the fun thing about it is that students have 16 weeks in which they get to know the sponsor. So they work on a real project. That's one of you will come with a problem statement, and then a group of students, 5, 6 of them, will take on that problem, understand the problem, understand your organization, see where you want to go. If it requires them to learn something in that short period of time, they will do that, and they've come out with the proof of concept or maybe the solution altogether, or at least they'll bring it to a point where you can probably polish it a little bit and then make it production ready. What we have seen is that there are a variety of problems in organizations that they want to tackle, and everybody likes to have a quick solution. You know, who wants to wait? Who said that a project that goes on for 3 years is the best project in the world, and the one that is delivered in 4 weeks is the worst? Nobody does that, but everybody wants to have that speed. If you're not doing it, then probably your competitor is doing it. And if your competitor is the one who launches it before you, then you lose that ground. I mean, let's talk about the video conferencing techniques, softwares. We have so many of them in the market leaders. Do you think they were the only ones who thought of having a video conferencing solution? Probably they were the ones who came out in the market first, and then they grew from there. So speed is important. Ideas need to be executed first, and everybody looks at the speed. What we are seeing is that students are able to use platforms like low-code platforms to quickly get the sponsors to a point that, okay, this works. Now, there's a technique called fast fail, where on day one, something should work. And I think that's what everybody wants, that in a few weeks, is it possible or is it not? Because I don't want to spend my 6 months working on something that will not work the way it is intended to. So what we have seen is that our students are not only able to learn something quickly, but also deliver it to a point that we know, okay, this is the right path or not. And I mean, we've had some of the biggest organizations from Dallas-Fort Worth who have been sponsors in our program, and even to the point, some startups. So it really doesn't matter what's the revenue that we're talking about here, but all of them have these unique problems that they want to solve. And things like low code really help students. Another thing that it does is, and I want to point this out very well, is it's confidence at the end of the day. Am I confident with this solution or not? A lot of times they might just write the best program that they have written ever, and they're just not confident whether it is the right one or not. And in a lot of cases, it's a really sharp product. But I think what low code does is, the visual ability to quickly see how it looks like. We always talked about wireframing solutions. Well, it's wireframing with life. They're living solutions there. You can see how they work, and you immediately know whether this will go on. So that gives a lot of confidence to them while they go on solving a problem. And that's where the whole turnaround is shorter. They are more confident. The clients are more confident. The consumers get it quickly. It's a win-win for everybody.
I love it. Well, one of the reasons the three of us are sitting here today is because Jen introduced me to Gaurav last spring, and we ran a hackathon at the end of his course last year. And we brought the students together and we gave them a challenge over a 3-4 day period to create a digital assistant for orientation, kind of proof of concept for UT Dallas. And so over like a long weekend, came back and, 4 or 5 different applications, very different looks and feels, kind of ways to see here you're a new student on campus. How do you find where you want to go? How do you access the library? How do you get your parking pass? Like pulling these different systems together and creating different interfaces. And they were working applications. Now, were they perfect? No, but if you take that to the business place, right? In a week, we can knock out a working prototype that's pretty well stubbed out, connecting to real systems. do we want to then go hard in that and take it all the way to full production? And what ideas kind of win? And so you see clients doing this, really kind of thinking about it. The other thing that, I mean, it is, I think as we've all emerged from COVID, right? If you've traveled anywhere, the world has become very digitized over the last 18 months. And I went to Hawaii this summer, and it's like everything that used to have a person to like check in and do those forms of paper that you do, and both like the entire island was digitized by somebody. Like you scan to pay and you get it, you know, with your phone and all these applications. And then when you go somewhere and you go to a business that's not, they have no digitization, it's very frustrating. And it kind of, every business is becoming a digitized business. And so low code is a way that every business, whether, I mean, you could very easily be running a lemonade stand or an ice cream shop and very quickly use these technologies to provide a different experience in your business. And so you take the big companies, the ones that are probably going to see the biggest benefits, the ones that get there, you know, quickly are going to have a huge advantage over their competitors.
So there's a good piece of entertainment on this. We actually evolved our hackathons to now be these live build challenges. I'm sure you saw, but if you go to like youtube.com/Appian, you look at our videos, just search for a live build challenge. It's actually really cool. Instead of doing a hackathon, we just said, okay, here's 6 contestants. We ran it like an esport. If you ever seen esports before, where you see these competitors playing video games, instead we just had them 6 people. You see all their screens simultaneously, and then they're given a challenge. The challenge was a pseudo use case of maintenance manager Mitch, who works for an airline who needs to track all the aircraft across the country, schedule maintenance, and manage those aircraft. And he had 1 hour to build it. And that was it, and live. And he had to start from scratch, and everyone in the audience could watch exactly what you're doing with commentary over top. A young lady actually won it. She built the entire thing in 40 minutes. So if you check out the YouTube channel, it's a pretty good entertainment as well, because we had like profiles and cameos of the individual contestants and their history and how they got into software development, low-code development. But it's a great testament of the idea of it. It's like, yes, you can do these things. You can do these things fast. You just need to understand these new tool sets that allow you to visually define it and very quickly put things together.
Dan, I was just thinking, I'd rather, well, if you take it to a consumer or a customer and say, hey, would you rather have something at 80% in 4 weeks or 99% in a year? I think most people would say, give me the 80% 4 weeks.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me see what it looks like, and then we can iterate on that. And I think that's essentially what we're saying you can do, is you can do something very quickly, just what you're talking about over a weekend with students. It's pretty impressive. And then the ability to iterate and partner with your business partner to take it from the 80% to 100%. And I won't even say 100% because, you know, the requirements will always change anyway. So it's not like a year from now.
Well, I mean, we were doing the app factories, right, where you get 3 people and they just 3 developers, 1 architect, and they work with taking kind of the next thing that pops off the top, and you spin it through the factory in 6 weeks. You get it to where it needs to be, and then you balance the do we take the next request, or do we continue to enhance on this, and kind of the notion of kind of the competing, you know, we've got fixed dollars that we're going to do this, but how much throughput, how many applications can we get in a year?
It's amazing how you get to 80% in 4 weeks and go, people are like, oh, I'll take the 80%. I'm actually good with this.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a shortage of backlog that IT teams are dealing with from business requests to say, how can we more quickly go through the backlog?
And how quickly people want to launch into a new business or implement something out very, very quickly because they've seen a competitor do something, or they've seen a business opportunity, and how quickly you can get out in front of, you know, get something to market.
I want to go ahead.
And just one thing to what Dan just said, timing is critical, because if you give it too much time, your consumers' need might change by then.
Mm-hmm.
So by what you thought was cutting edge, by the time you got to your 100%, which is, it never happens. You never hit that 100. You know, but if their needs change, then it's an absolute solution on which you spend all your energy rather than giving them a chance to use it, experience it, and maybe redefine their needs. Because again, let's be honest, the consumer landscape, it will always change. I mean, I think there are two things which are the greatest races of all time. One is developers or solution providers chasing the consumer needs. That's the one race. The other race is, the YouTube buffering and the playing. I think these are the two races that are important. But then the fact is, consumers, their needs change rapidly. They can just, COVID, for example, it just skyrocketed how people wanted digital content, which none of us were ready about.
Yeah.
But then look at us after 1.5 years, they're totally different. So yeah, timing is key.
I want to take a quick break right now just to see from a questions from the audience perspective for Paul, if there's any questions online.
Yeah.
I'll wait. If anybody has any questions in the room.
So is QA built into
Into a
Yes,
talk.
yes.
into the suite, into all of that?
Yeah, it's one of the challenges of, of testing automation as well. So when we talk about designing a low-code platform, we think about the full SDLC, and QA is an important part of that, leveraging both automated testing as well as manual testing, automated as much as possible. So in our specific product, when a person designs logic, they can actually define the test architecture for that logic right with the logic, which actually is a huge benefit because you ever done like Java development? When you write something in Java, fine. And now you need to learn how to write a unit test on that Java. So you need to go learn how to do JUnit now. And then once you use JUnit, then you need to maybe learn how to do Ant scripts and get all the stuff into source code control. And now you're managing multiple code bases, your JUnit tests and your Java tests, and you're trying to make sure they all align. And again, that's the problem that we see with complex software development. There's a lot of different tools. We try to consolidate it all into a single tool. So the test infrastructure is there with the design infrastructure. It's all version controlled together as well.
So you're using AI to define what really?
In some areas, yeah. So we specifically use artificial intelligence in a variety of areas for design, specifically on predictive design. So like if you're in the Appian process modeler, there's a suggestion area where we try to predict based on pattern analysis what you're about to do next. And we suggest to you the next node that you probably want to design. So you can get to a point where you just say, oh yeah, like click, 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 and then actually knew what you're going to build by looking at the data you're working with and the process design flow. Another area that we work with is on what we call health check. Once you design an application, then, do you have looping patterns? Do you have memory leaks? Do you have areas of the product that need to be optimized? We use artificial intelligence as well as prescriptive logic to basically scan the entire application and then make recommendations for optimization. And then we do a lot of static analysis as well on all the code base for optimization across the architecture.
So can you build enterprise-wide applications using this low code, or is it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
As well as mobile applications?
Yep.
Okay.
We have several financial services companies, right, that have these like onboarding a new customer, commercial clients, right? You have a lot of federal requirements on know your customer. And so the processes of looking them up and researching people, and it used to be a lot of emails like, okay, here's the file of the, this I've done, and building an application that workflows all of that through several different departments and third parties, and got the right security requirements of who can see it and who can access it. All that can be done.
Yeah, I can give you some like name case studies, like the United States Air Force uses our software for all the contracting and purchasing for the entire US Air Force. We also like FDA, Regulatory Authority over Medical Devices, the Office of Comptroller Currency, what's called the CATS process, which is the regulatory authority on all the national banks, runs on Appian. The Office or Options Clearinghouse Corporation, which is SNFCU, it's a systemically financial important part of the entire US financial, runs a lot of their infrastructure on Appian. The Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, all the insurance allocation program, the logic behind that runs on Appian. So a lot of big programs. Typically Appian is used, when a company needs to express their unique digital identity, that's typically when they use a software like us. If you want to do a survey, use SurveyMonkey. It's cheap, readily available, it's already built. You don't need to build something, it already exists. But when you need to build something like a regulatory authority for the US government, you're not going to buy that off the shelf. You need to build it, and you're going to get much more efficiency by building on low code. Question there.
Yeah, I've got a question, got a couple questions actually from the chat room for the virtual attendees. First of all, the question is from someone who is starting their career. And they want to know what advice you have for someone who's beginning their career in developing those more horizontal, well-rounded skill sets discussed earlier, especially because early entry-level analyst roles are also often focused on the development focused grunt work in the process. Rather complicated question, but it makes sense.
Sounds like one for you, Gaurav.
Yeah. Well, again, first of all, congratulations. You're right there. One of the things that we know is it's a very exciting life right after you graduate and you get into the industry. One of the things that any employer will never tell you but will always want is what's the value you bring to the table. One of the things that we have seen employers say over and over again is they just don't want somebody who's a sack of skills. C++, Java, Python, databases, this, that, but they want somebody who can bring that value. And if you are somebody who really understands how to look at a problem, a business problem, and create a solution, and let me tell you, you'll not see that on day one. It is a process that you learn over a period of time. There are additional tools that help you build that skill set, that helps you deepen that skill set as well. But again, you are a problem solver at the end of the day. And problem solver who's equipped with the technology. So what happens is something like a low-code platform really helps you accelerate that learning. Now, over a period of time, who says that you cannot go and look deep into some of these areas and build your skill there? But think from a standpoint of a problem solver, that are you that problem solver who this organization needs? And every time when you provide that value as a problem solver, they will want you to be there because you understand what they do. See, at the end of the day, think about it this way. And I always tell my students this, that when you stop working for an organization, they will not think of you that, oh my God, what great PPTs he used to make. But they would think about you as what a great problem solver or a person of value you were. Try to be that person. And of course, tech is the way to do it. Do you think?
I think that's great advice. I mean, I think one, be a sponge, learn all you can about that organization and that process. And especially early on in the process, like the people you're talking about that are doing that YouTube and building that application in 40 minutes, that wasn't the first time they built one, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're first starting out, take time to think about the end-to-end process. Take time to think about the end-to-end data flows. Think about what it is the organization's trying to do. And, I think a lot of people, it's so easy to get trained now. You can go out to Udemy and buy a course for $20. You can watch YouTube videos. You can read books, however you best do it. Invest in yourself, just getting smart on the technology. It's so easy to kind of upskill and be ready for it. When it comes. It looks like you've got a second question back there.
You have a second question with another virtual attendee. It says, as of today, who do you consider the best low-code, no-code ML solution? And also, what's the best?
What was the last part?
What's the best for the app development?
Well, Appian.
There's over Malcom, let them know that they can go out there and try and train
Yeah,
themselves.
that's true. If you want to try it yourself, you can go to get your own community edition for free. But as I said, there's over 400 vendors who advertise themselves as low code. So it's also, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to build a video game? Appian's not the right solution for you for that. Unreal has a design platform, which is very low code now for building that. So there's other platforms. So you need to understand what your intent is. What's the type of application you want to build, and does the platform align with those capabilities?
Oh, I've got right.
But just adding to what you said, in case you're looking forward to learning these skills, I know a university very close by.
Yeah.
I know a professor that happens to teach a course that delivers some of these skills. So
And I would, as I've done IT recruiting for 20 years now, and I would say to those people who are trying to become more a part of a team of teams where they're actually learning various skills within the organizations, because you've obviously built all of this on agile methodology, is if they would, even if they don't go to the trouble or spend the money to become certified in these things, if they would read the books, do the online training for as a scrum master, again, that person who kind of coordinates all of this, BA, project manager, to get that bigger picture so they can anticipate what the next stage is going to be and be ready to serve towards that next stage, they're going to stand out and get that opportunity to move into the next thing.
And from a career advice, and go back to the previous question, it's really important also to let your identity merge with the corporation you're working for. It's somewhat hard. If you ever work for a company and you feel it's just a job, then you're probably not going to accelerate in that. So if you work for a water utility company, whatever, an airline, a bank, you need to care deeply about the business operations and what that goes on. You need to obsess about it, right? You know, like work with water utility companies. It's like they really obsess around water flow and making sure their clients are getting clean water. And if you care deeply about the business problems that that company has, really at your own personal core, and you also gain the skills to deliver new solutions and enhancements to that, you're going to be extremely valuable to that organization. And that's how you kind of rise to ranks, is really kind of let your identity merge with the mission of the organization.
So I think we have 2 minutes. We're probably pretty close. So we're going to do like a speed round question,
Okay.
which is, we've percolated interest for folks that are in the room and virtually around low code. What do you suggest to them to go do next? Malcolm, you want to go ahead and start? We'll work back this way.
Yeah, as I said, try it out. You know, the low code it's one thing you should expect from a low code vendor, that entry should be free. So you can go to Appian.com or any other vendor often and check out free trials of it, build your own. We provide a community edition version, so you get up to 15 users for free, up to like 250 executions of processes a day for free. You get robotic process automation for free at that tier level, and try it out. You know, it's one of our customers, a writer, has the challenge that they have for their existing developer base. So Dan DeSoto is one of the heads of development over at Writer in the Miami area, and he has about 80 developers, and they're a bunch of Fortran, .NET, and Appian developers. So he's got some mainframe guys there, and the .NET developers always come to him and say, well, yeah, I could build that, you know, I could build that in .NET, because they don't want to learn a new skill. And the answer always is, well, okay, fine. I have a meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Why don't you join me and show me your prototype? You have 24 hours to build it. So the way to learn is to challenge yourself and find the right tool that's going to meet the delivery fast. So again, a lot of these things are freely available.
I think, you know, I would challenge you to, when you sit at your computer over the next day or so, every time you read an email and then you flip out of email to go do something, start to ask yourself, how could this be done differently if it was automated and in some sort of application type of environment? Because when you start to get the mind working that way, you kind of see opportunities just all over the place.
Absolutely. And again, as Malcolm just said, this might be your silver bullet, this may not be. Try it out, see if it really solves your problems. One of the things that we have been able to establish amongst our organizations is this ecosystem where you can come into it, bring in your problem, and maybe over a short period of time, we can see if this is really the thing for you, for your organizations. A lot of these relationships have started with our students, with you, with all of us coming and talking about problems that we can co-own. See, if I'm not the one who's developing it, maybe at some point of time, I might be a user of your product. So we're all part of this ecosystem, directly or indirectly. So bring in your problems to us, and we have great people who are here building solutions. We can find it out. And if this is not the thing, as he said, if you want to develop a video game on a low code platform, maybe that may not be the way to do it. But at least you will find some direction. And that is why discussions like these are important, because we want to know whether we are charting the right territories or not.
And I'll just close with one of the things that I took out of this whole thing was if you're going through your day and doing the work that you do on a daily basis and think there has to be a better way, there probably is a better way.
Yeah.
So go solve it. Go try to do something about it. Go try to fix it and see if there is a better way. And I think that's what we're trying to do is challenge people to be better, to do better, to bring solutions to bear. And if low code is a technology that can help you do it, great. If you have other ideas that can get it, great. Let's go improve, right? Kind of all of our lives individually. When there has to be a better way, there usually is. So let's go solve for some of those things. I think that's what's exciting. Thank you, gentlemen. On behalf of Tech Titans programs team, really appreciate you joining us today. So round of applause. I'll do a couple of quick announcements before we close, which is our next tech industry luncheon will be on October 8th. And that will be the ever popular, I have that, Innovators Luncheon featuring the 4 finalists in the Tech Titans Awards Corporate Innovation category, as well as the 4 finalists for the Emerging Company category. So again, similar to this, it's going to be held in a hybrid. It will be held at Prestonwood Country Club for those interested in attending in person. It will also be done in a virtual format as well. So if this has been of interest to you, or if you're interested in participating in any of our other innovation lunches or any of the Tech Tuesday presentations that are provided or any of the other events, you can check out techtitans.org. Please do that. Check out the site. If you're new, I'd strongly consider being a member. It's been an exciting opportunity for me, quite frankly, to be a part of the programs team. So our thanks to those who joined virtually. Thank you. I think if you stick on, there's an opportunity for some networking. And with that, thank you again. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. And we're officially adjourned.